This is the story of a tiny connector that became so important, an entire continent passed a law to make it universal, and one of the biggest companies in the world fought that law at every turn. That connector is USB-C, and to understand why it matters, you need to know what the world looked like before it existed. USB arrived in 1996, and for a while that seemed like genuine progress, until the connectors started multiplying faster than anyone could keep track of. USB-A came first, then USB-B, then mini USB, then micro USB, each one solving a narrow problem while quietly creating new ones. Apple stepped in with its own answer in 2012, a proprietary connector called Lightning, which launched with the iPhone 5 and immediately ensured that Apple users lived in a completely separate cable universe from everyone else. The outcome was a kitchen drawer full of cables where none of them worked for the thing you actually needed right now. And that shared frustration across hundreds of millions of people was the exact problem USB-C was built to fix. In August 2014, the USB Implementers Forum published the USB Type-C specification, backed by a member list that included Apple, Google, Microsoft, Intel, Samsung, and HP. What USB-C got right starts with something almost embarrassingly simple. You can plug it in either way, but a single USB-C cable can also carry data, charge a device, and push video to a display all at once. And when the USB Power Delivery 3.1 specification arrived in May 2021, it raised the power ceiling to 240 watts, enough to run a high-performance laptop. For speed, USB 4 tops out at 40 gigabits per second, and Intel's Thunderbolt 4, also built on the USB-C connector, matches that figure exactly. One thing worth understanding clearly, USB-C describes the shape of the connector, not the performance inside the cable. Two cables can look completely identical and operate at wildly different speeds, and that gap created real problems early on. In 2015 and 2016, a Google engineer named Benson Leung systematically tested USB-C cables on the open market and found many of them were wired incorrectly and capable of damaging devices. His findings spread fast and put a hard spotlight on how unregulated the early USB-C market actually was. By the late 2010s, USB-C had clearly won the technical argument, but one company, Apple, was keeping hundreds of millions of iPhone users on Lightning. That's when the European Union decided the situation was no longer acceptable. June 2022 brought a formal vote to mandate USB-C as the universal charging standard, backed by two specific figures. European consumers were spending an estimated 2.4 billion euros annually on chargers, while discarded chargers contributed around 11,000 tons of e-waste across Europe every year. The compliance deadline for smartphones, tablets, and cameras landed on December 28, 2024, with laptops given until April 28, 2026. Apple pushed back publicly, arguing in a 2021 submission to the European Commission that forcing a single connector standard stifles innovation. The company also raised concerns about e-waste from obsolete Lightning accessories, which critics noted was a peculiar argument from the company that had built the Lightning ecosystem in the first place. What made the position harder to hold was Apple's own record. USB-C had already landed on the MacBook Pro in 2016, the iPad Pro in 2018, and the iPad Air in 2020. The iPhone was simply the last holdout, and in September 2023, 11 years after Lightning launched, the iPhone 15 shipped with USB-C. On the base model, that port ran at USB 2.0 speeds, matching what Lightning had offered and nothing more, while the Pro models received speeds up to 10 gigabits per second. USB-C is a 24-pin connector built by a consortium of the world's largest tech companies to replace decades of fragmented cable formats. It carries power, data, and video, plugs in from either direction, and became such a clear answer to a well-documented problem that a government had to mandate it just to make sure every holdout actually got there. The cable in your bag right now is the product of technical development, corporate lobbying, e-waste statistics, and a vote in the European Parliament. Not many objects that small carry that much history.